Well, good morning, everybody. Glad to be with you again. And today's topic is pricing your product so it will sell. And David, I think as I was thinking about just kind of looking through our notes for this, that this is one of those topics that you kind of never get away from because whether you're new to entrepreneurship and you're just starting out, you're trying to figure out what do I even, price my services, my product, course,
Mhm.
whatever, or you're launching something new, even if in an established business. This is really a very important topic, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because I see people mess this up all the time. This is something that very commonly gets muffed. And you think about it this way: you have the people out there who are going to just demand. I've seen people actually literally kill businesses because they took the price and then just jacked it up. Like, oh, we're now gonna take this product that was $5,000, we're gonna charge $7,500 because we're
Right.
worth it. And I'm like, okay, is that really your ego is what determines your worth? Like,
Mhm.
okay. And naturally, what happened? Everyone stopped buying it.
Yeah.
People decided I don't want it anymore. But I've also seen the other side where people go out and they don't charge what they're worth.
Yeah.
I've met that's probably more common than
Yeah.
the egomaniacs who go out and overcharge for everything that they do and think everything they do is that every word that comes out of their mouth is gold and you should all
Right.
pay for it at that rate. But what I normally see is people who don't value themselves enough.
Mhm.
People who put too low of a value in what they do. And in fact, what I've seen too often is people who go and they they go out and price themselves out to do work for people, and I've literally seen people on the other side look at them and go, I can't pay you that amount. Like, if you're going to charge me $1,000 for this project, I'm going to pay you two because I have a conscience. I mean, I've literally seen people
I
do
feel
that.
guilty paying you that little.
Right, if I do this, I am not going to sleep well at night because I know that I'm screwing you,
Yeah.
that you are charging so far beneath your value that I don't even feel comfortable doing it. And
Yeah.
that absolutely happens. That is absolutely something that I see more than the other. And so on the one hand, if you charge too much, you're going to kill your business
Right.
because the value to the price is not in alignment. The
Right.
price that people are paying is too high compared to what they're receiving on the other end, and they're saying no thanks, it's too much money.
Right.
On the other side, if you don't charge enough, you don't charge a good price for what you're worth, you're leaving all sorts of profit on the table, and you're never going to be able to go and have a successful business because you're never going to make enough money to survive.
Right.
You're always going to be living on the land of like next to no money because you're undercharging for everything that you do. So
Yeah.
the challenge is, how do you find the sweet spot?
Yeah.
How do you find a price that you charge that isn't exorbitant? You're not screwing people. You're not being
Yeah.
greedy and sticking it to people, but you're also charging what you're worth. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today.
Well, and another thing that's kind of on my mind, David, is we condition people to our pricing. So I've had this happen even in my journey where I had one of my early clients, I was charging a certain amount for like a workshop series. And I did that for like 2 years and stayed with the same price point. And it was like the third year I said, I need to increase this by at least 10%. And so that's how I went about it was, I need to increase my price, 10%. I wasn't trying to gouge them. I wasn't trying to, stick it to them, but they were a service-based business. They understood their prices were rising for their customers and clients too. I got no pushback, but it was how I approached it with them was, this is the value, this is what we're doing. They knew that it was good for them and their team. And
Right.
so they had no issue, right? But if I'd have said, I'm gonna jump it up 50% out of nowhere,
They
that
may be
probably would
saying,
have, raised some red flags for them. But, the other thing I'm just thinking like my dad was in retail for 30 years and then, he ended up starting his own painting business when I was going to college, and he did this to himself. Like we're talking, like in a service-based business like that, he didn't understand pricing at the beginning for himself, and he screwed himself over more often than not because he undercharged, and he had to learn. I remember him telling me that he's like, I just had to learn how to, make sure that I was covering all my bases. And, he started charging. In his case, he was like, my time plus the actual product. And because I think he was trying to put the paint price and everything, or he wasn't taking certain things into account so he had to learn that process. And I think a lot of this is a journey, right, of discovery in this too, that we'll talk about is we have to do some research. We have to pay attention to our numbers. We have to consider things because you're right. I think a lot of people that we at least engage with, tend to undercharge and undersell and undervalue ourselves.
Right.
And, I've been on calls with people before. They're like, you know what, you need to double your prices, and and people just like cringe. They're like, I can't do that. And it's like, but what they're already charging is so minimal that
Right.
doubling it isn't even that big, right? So
There's still a good value at doubling.
right, they're still cheap to some people, right? And even when you're depending on who your target audience is, like you said, somebody said, I can't even in good conscience pay you that little. Other people are like, because you're charging that little, you must not be that valuable, or this thing must not be
Correct.
that valuable. So therefore, I'm not going to buy it because they're used to premium pricing. And so learning who your audience is, we run into this, I think, with our design launch grow clients, right? I just want it to be accessible to everybody. Well, that's great, but people
Right.
also value what they pay for.
Right.
And if they pay next to nothing, or you're giving things away all the time, people devalue the very thing that is valuable to help them, and they don't engage with it the way you ultimately want to. So you're working against yourself.
Well, it's a hard lesson I had to learn very early on in this journey is that if no matter what your heart is, because a lot of people when they're first starting out, they have this heart, I just want to help people because
Mhm.
I know I have something valuable. I know I have something that can make a difference in people's lives. And I just want to be able to help people and do it. And some of these people aren't even that concerned about the money. They just want to make a difference in someone's
Mhm.
life, which is great. But then you realize the people on the other side don't respect you or value what you're putting out as much
Right.
because you've either done it for free or doing it so cheaply that they look at it and go, well, it's only this much money, so it's not really that big of a deal. Well, okay, now you got a problem that you're not even having that big of an impact on people's lives because
Yeah.
you're so cheap and
Right.
they don't actually put a lot of value on it. So how do you do this? How do you go through a process of determining what is that sweet spot? How do you find your
Mhm.
value? And I think one of the very first things you need to do is you need to understand what your solution is.
Mhm.
What is the problem that you're solving? What is that? And be honest about that. And how complex and difficult is it to solve this issue?
Mhm.
So, in other words, if I'm helping somebody, you know, cross the street, that's a very simple problem.
Right.
A person who stands on the street corner and guides people like children across the street
Yeah.
safely. uh, That's a very simple problem. Doesn't require a lot of technical skill. Most everyone can do that. It's not hard
Right.
compared. So that person is not going to get paid a lot, or even like janitorial type work. Not saying that it's not hard, not saying that you don't put a lot
Right.
of effort into it. I'm talking about the difficulty in doing it. Is
Yeah.
most everyone can clean a toilet.
Right.
Let's just be honest. And again, people get upset because they say, "Well, I'm doing valuable things." It's not that what you're doing isn't valuable. What you're doing isn't very complex.
Right.
It doesn't have. You're doing a job that's easily replaceable. There's
Right.
a lot of people that if push came to shove, they could do the job of a janitor.
Right.
They could go and sweep, they could go dust, they could go clean bathrooms, clean up messes, mop floors. Those are not skills that are that complex that anyone else could do. Compared that to the skills of a professional athlete. And how many people can shoot 30-foot jumpers and make baskets from that far away? How
Right.
many people can dunk a basketball? How many people can hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball? How many
Mhm.
people can withstand being tackled by a 300-pound lineman?
Right.
They're and be able to be fast enough to get away from them and to
Right.
do all of these things are very difficult.
Right.
And so, like, why do professional athletes get paid exorbitant sums of money. Let's just be honest. Like,
Well, part of it, right, is they bring in and they bring in revenue from fans,
right,
right? They want to go watch them.
right,
Whereas in your case, like the example of the janitor, nobody's coming to watch the janitor clean toilets and mop floors, despite the fact that it's an important job for that
right,
business.
right. And
I was also
that's it
thinking
exactly.
you went to the athlete side. I was thinking like, what about a heart surgeon or a brain surgeon?
Correct.
Right? Like that,
Right.
I remember talking to our general practitioner years ago, and she said, you know, the amount of people going into general practices was minimizing, and specialization was on the rise. Well, guess what? There's a lot of money behind being a specialist in the medical field.
Right. Exactly. And so some of your ability to charge higher prices is going to be totally determined by what problem you're solving.
Hmm.
So we got to start right there. You could become the most amazing janitor in the world, but janitorial services are only going to go so high.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest with you. No one is going to pay a janitor $1 million a year to be a janitor of, like, let's say a high school,
Right.
or some facility. No matter how good you are, no matter how efficient you are, no matter how great you clean, no matter how great a job you do, you're never going to provide a value. The solution that you provide is never going to be valuable enough to be at that level
Right.
for you as an individual. Now, if you were even a base level Major League Baseball player, and I mean, like, not even one of the best ones, but one of the ones that's like
Yeah.
just
And their minimum salary is like ridiculous.
basically right, making league minimum, and a bench player, you're making close to $1 million a year.
Hmm.
It's between, I don't remember the minimum salary, somewhere between like $500,000 to $1 million, like,
Right.
land, I believe. So even there, you're guaranteed, if you can make it there, you're
Right.
guaranteed making a significant sum of money. So some of this is just the game that you're in. And so some of you, if you're saying, well, I want to be able to increase my income, some of you got to understand, what solution are you providing? And is it even possible to
Yeah.
make money with the solution that you're providing? Or do you need to consider, is there anything else in life that I could do that would
Mhm.
give me the potential to earn more income? Because again,
Well,
certain things are always going to be capped.
well, and I even was talking to a friend the last day or two about how, like, so if, with the leadership coaching and training that I offer to companies, I've had to really try to connect value, because it's an intangible in a lot of ways, right? Like, to develop leaders feels intangible, but then when you start to put dollar figures to, well, what's the cost of turnover? What's the cost of replacement? What's the cost of having a bad employee that's causing damage? What's the cost of having bad leadership that's causing people to leave or whatever, right? Like, a lot of our clients that we work with, a lot of people out there that are offering solutions, if it's not a direct, like, obvious return on investment, I'll say, right? Like, if I'm gonna invest $100 and it's gonna make me $1,000 because of this business solution, that's an easier sell than, leadership coaching or counseling services, or, you name it, right? Like, because those things don't have hard dollars attached to them. Like, obviously they're there, but you have to really highlight them and bring them to the surface,
Right.
versus like a business coaching program like we offer. We help people develop their businesses so they can earn money. There's a more obvious,
Right.
tangible result.
Right.
If you work with us to help you build your business, here's what you can expect to get.
Correct. And so you got all that. And so once you kind of understand the ballpark that you're playing in, and you're like, okay, this
Mhm.
is the world that we're in. Well, what is even possible for me? Because, like I said, if you're in the wrong ballpark, you're only going to be able to go so far.
Right.
Like, and so forth. So what, now that you understand, like, okay, if you're in a ballpark that has the potential that you could actually make some good money doing this, what are the alternatives to what you do? So think about the service that you're offering or the product that you're offering. What are the alternatives? Well, again, if you're a janitor, it's not that hard to replace you. If you decide to leave and to
Right.
go do something else, they can hire another janitor without too much difficulty. You're
Mhm.
fairly easily replaceable. But let's say, for example, like your example earlier, Chris, what if you're a heart surgeon?
Mhm.
And so if I am a person who needed heart surgery for whatever reason, there's something going on with my heart and I needed heart surgery, I need a specific person with a specific skill set who's good at this, who's trained at this, who knows exactly what they're doing to help me.
Yeah.
I can't go, hey, Chris, I need heart surgery. Can you help me out?
Yeah.
Like that would not go well because I don't want to go hop on Chris's kitchen table and have him get out the cough. I mean, but so all of those options. But if I needed help fixing my lawnmower, I could go to Chris's house and say, hey, Chris, can you help me show me what I need to do to fix this thing? And you could probably solve that for me.
Yeah.
So there's a difference here. You got to understand how many other options do people have? Yeah. Are there lots of other products and services out there that could solve the problem for them? If so, you got to understand what those options are. Mm-hmm. You got to look at your service from the perspective of a customer and say, okay, I as a customer, if I wasn't me, if I was instead in my customer's shoes, if I want to look at this and say, okay, as a customer, I want to do this. I want to achieve this goal, or I want to solve this problem. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what are my choices? So there's always, do it yourself type options on most cases, unless we're talking about heart surgery or things like that.
Right.
I think you want to be doing that with yourself. That would really be scary.
Although didn't the first guy that did an appendectomy do it on himself?
I don't even want to know. That's even scary to think about. I'm going to cut myself open. Like, oh my. But anyway, see, in most cases, except for some of those extremely high level things, there are going to be some do-it-yourself options. Number two, you could use other products and services. There's other ways of doing this, or you could do nothing. And so you as a service provider need to understand what are all these other options out here, and understand what's the cost of all those things. And you talked about it a little bit earlier when you were talking about leadership training, Chris, is that a lot of these companies are saying, well, we don't need to solve this. We don't need to solve these leadership problems. Okay. So you're going to continue to have heavy turnover. Right. And you're going to continue to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars paying someone to interview and to hire all these new people and train all these new people. They stick around for a few months and then they leave. Yeah. Okay, that's what do nothing looks like. Yeah. You're perpetuating the problem. The problem comes with a cost. And the problem comes with issues. So you're going to have low productivity. You're going to have high turnover. You have huge expenses, constantly training and replacing employees because no one really cares to stay there. Mm-hmm. So that's the cost of doing nothing. Or you can try and do it yourself. Well, we're just going to, cheer each other up and try and be kinder to each other. Okay. But without a good strategy, right. Are you going to become better leaders if you don't have a good strategy? If you're just going to try and do it yourself, we're going to read a John Maxwell leadership book and, we're going to teach ourselves to become better leaders. Well, that is an option, and you can do that. Or there's other coaches and trainers out there who could come in and provide leadership training for you. So you as a service provider need to understand these options, and you need to understand the costs and benefits of each one. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what? You can just spend $0 and do nothing, but look what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. You aren't spending $0. You're bleeding cash in all these other areas. Your brain is maybe not connected. Yep. The flow of what's happening in your business. You may think, oh, these employees, they just suck. They don't work hard. These people today don't want to put it in. Well, maybe it's not that the employees suck. Maybe they don't want to work for you. Yeah. Maybe that's really the question, is not that they won't work hard, but they won't work hard for you.
Well, and I find, in that realm, right, with companies, my conversations, it's typically when we especially talk about pricing and value, it's rarely have I had anybody say it's too expensive. Most people say, I don't know when we're going to fit it in. It's a time thing versus a price thing. And so that's part of overcoming this issue too, is helping people even see how they can.
And what's the time cost of not doing something?
Yeah, because that's a cost that leads to financial cost too, right? Like
time if you're going to spend all your time dealing with all these other issues, instead of working on your business to grow it and to make it more successful, right? That all is a cost as well.
And I think about it, David, from the standpoint, like I have a buddy who actually had two friends that they love to work on cars. And so every time they have a car issue, they think they get horrified when I take my car to the mechanic. And they're like, Chris, you know that they charge you this, but we could, if you just spend 4 hours on a Saturday afternoon and dug in, you could figure this out and get these parts from this website. Well, I'm like, that's probably true, but A, I'm not a trained mechanic, so I don't trust my results. And B, I value my time too much, even though I know that
And
there's
all
probably I'm probably overpaid in some ways, so to speak, but I'm like, I know if I drop my car off, they call me like 3 or 4 hours later or the next day and say, "Hey, it's fixed."
right.
I can swipe my credit card and be out and be done, and I don't have to think about it. I That is highly valuable to me, whereas my friends, they think it's an atrocity to pay somebody, you know, money to work on their car, but for them, it's also a hobby. And I'm like, that's
Yeah,
great. You love to do this. So do it. I
right.
hate that. I don't want to do that. Right. Like, David, you and I know you've talked about this past, like you've been using a mowing company, a lawn company for years, and you've really enjoyed that. I love mowing the grass. And it's not that I couldn't pay somebody to come mow my grass. That's actually something I enjoy. Well,
Mhm.
to me, that doesn't feel like a cost of time to me. It feels like actually almost like a release to see something get accomplished in 30, 45 minutes when I'm done mowing. But we value different things. So price is not always the same to the next person from the next person.
Right. So, and exactly it. I mean, and so everybody values their time and everybody values their money differently. So, you as a provider need to understand that. You need to understand that landscape and that perspective from the mind of your customer. You need to understand how are they viewing these things, because this is going to help you know how your pricing needs to fall. So, as you then look at all of these things, you need to start identifying the gaps. Okay. So, you need to start identifying, like, okay, you could do the do it yourself option. Okay.
Mhm.
You could spend an entire afternoon under the hood of your car, messing around, going out, figuring out the parts, building it, rebuilding your whatever needed to be fixed, putting it all back together. But at the end of the day, I know for me, I used to, try and fix like appliances around the house when things would break. And
Mhm.
I had one time where we had something go wrong with our refrigerator. So I decided I'm going to dig into it and I'm going to figure it out and fix it myself. And oh
I know
boy.
she said one time.
Maybe the better word was the last time. Because at the end of it, I ended up killing several hours on this. And by the time I was done, because I messed it up the first time and maybe even messed it up the second time, bought the wrong thing,
Yeah.
thought I had the right part, went and realized, no, you didn't get the right part. No, you're not fixing the right thing. It's actually that, not this. Spent more money and more fixing it myself than I would have if I had just hired somebody.
Right.
And I realized this is not a good use of my time. And I just had to
Right.
call a spade and realize I'm not good. I'm not Mr. Fix It with my hands. That's
Yeah.
not, I'm good at other things in life. Those are things in life I am not good at. And
Yeah.
I need to be honest and realize this is not my thing and this is not my world. And so every time we look at one of these alternative solutions that people are using, the do it yourself model or the low cost model, or sometimes there's all done for you model, like
Right.
sometimes, like if you want a website built, you can hire somebody to work with you on it, or you could just pay someone to build the whole doggone thing for you, those
Right.
types of things. So there's the done for you model. Obviously, there's a big difference in price on those types of services,
Mhm.
but everyone has a gap in what it's going on. Like the do it yourself model means like you're going to spend all afternoon under the hood of your car.
Right.
And for you, Chris, you have to make that decision. Is that where you want to spend all Saturday afternoon?
Right.
Do you want to spend an entire afternoon under the hood of your car digging around trying to figure out what's going on and what needs to be fixed?
Mhm.
And so there's a cost to it. It's the cost of all your time. And it's the cost of you spending time doing things that you don't enjoy. Or, on other service providers, maybe they don't provide good service.
Mhm.
Maybe that option over there is cheaper than what you do. Maybe it's a more economical option from what you offer, but the reality is that they don't treat their customers well.
Yeah.
They don't provide good service. And you watched them enough to know that, yeah, you can go over there and you think you're going to spend less money, but you're going to spend money with them and still not get a solution.
Yeah.
So it's not better. And it's not a good solution. Or you're going to look at some of the others, the full service ones, and you're going to say, okay, yeah, they'll do everything for you. But do you see their prices?
Yeah.
Do you see how expensive they are? They are, taking people to the cleaners with the pricing that they're out there doing. So you have all of these things, and you have all these different pluses and minuses. And this is where you have to go to and once you understand, again, all the alternatives, now you got to go and identify the gaps. Okay. So what are the downsides of the do-it-yourself model? What are the costs and the negatives and the downsides of doing it yourself? What about the high-end model where they do it all for you? Maybe they still don't do great work, but they charge you an arm and a leg anyway to do it. Or maybe, that's these other providers, like I said, don't provide good service. Maybe they don't actually, maybe their process doesn't work well. So the customer is still not getting, you need to identify where those gaps are. You need to be able to understand, what is my future customer looking at when they're making their buying decision. They're looking at this, or this as potentially being able to solve their problem. Okay. Understand what those costs are. Understand what all the drawbacks are. Like, okay, you're going to do it cheap, but it's like, okay, but how much are you willing to fight this on your own?
Right.
At some point, when we talked about the leadership thing earlier, so many places don't grasp the problems that they're having. Like, they're having all these employee and personnel problems, but guess what? What you really have is a management problem. What you really have is a leadership problem, because nobody wants to work for your team.
Yeah.
And unless you're willing to realize, what you need to do to change. And here's the thing, I've mentioned this many times in the past, is I hired a trainer to help me in the gym. And a lot of this was, now look, I could, like so many other people, just pay my membership to the gym, go to the gym, use the equipment, and go home.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, that's kind of what I'm doing anyway. I'm going to the gym, I'm using the equipment, and I'm going home. And while I'm doing the exercises, the trainer's just standing there beside me, kind of observing. Okay. But here's what I learned, is I didn't know squat about what I was doing in terms of fitness at the gym.
Yeah.
I didn't know the importance of making sure that if you work out one side of your muscle, like, for example, like if you work out your bicep, you also need to make sure you work out your tricep. If you work out your quad, you also need to make sure you work out your hamstring. You have to have balance in all of your workouts, because otherwise, your legs get out, like one side of your leg gets strong and the other side doesn't. And now you're going to injure yourself because you have an imbalance in your muscles. And there's all these things, all these nuances that I'm learning as I've been going. I mean, I am 100 times more knowledgeable now than what I was when I started. But if I would have quit long ago, and I would not have gotten good results, and I would have not gotten any of the progress that I've made, because I had somebody who knew what they were doing standing next to me saying, okay, this is what we're going to do next. He was directing the exercises. He's like, okay, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this and this. And he knew exactly, because we want to hit this muscle group, that muscle group, and that. He's providing all the expertise because he knows what he's doing. So he's shortcutting my success in a big way. Just like when Chris goes into an organization, because he knows and understands leadership, he's going to know where things need to change. He's going to know what adjustments need to be made. He's going to know where things need to be improved quickly. And you're going to be able to make adjustments and changes a lot faster than if you just try and fumble your way through it on your own. So when you understand all that, when you understand all the options, when you understand the value that you bring, when you understand how all of this fits together in a bigger picture, now all of a sudden you can look at the service and the products that you offer. You could say, where do I fit in on this spectrum? Okay, that's what the do-it-yourself looks like. That's what the done for you looks like. And then I see all these things in the middle. I know the pluses and minuses of all those things. I know the value that I'm bringing. Where do I stack up in the middle of all these other potential choices? And no matter what you do, there's always other options. And don't
Yep.
think that I'm the only one who does this. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're
Well,
not
you
the
can even
only
use the example of if you have a back issue,
one.
watching YouTube videos of how to stretch your back muscle, is even an option for people, right? Like, I
Right.
think it was Dan Kennedy I read one time, he said, he was talking about value proposition, and I think it aligns with all this, is he said, why would people work with me or us compared to any and every other option out there on the market? That's part of this process, is determining that, like, what makes my solution or my process, our thing. Why would people choose that versus all the other things? Because, I hear people talking all the time about, I learned this on YouTube University, like they spend hours and hours and days on YouTube searching videos about how to do something, and you can do that.
Or you can
Or
spend $200 on a course and have it all laid out in sequential order for you.
right. Or
Right.
you could spend $2,000 and have somebody do it for you.
Right.
And it all depends on what you want, right? Like,
Right.
I'm getting to the point, David. I know you've gotten there probably a lot longer time ago than me, but it's like, well, there are certain things where it's like I am just you recognize quickly, I'm going to waste a lot of time
Right.
if I try to do this myself versus bringing in somebody else or getting a course or whatever to help me get focused on this problem.
Correct. So as you are viewing that, and that's a great perspective from a customer standpoint. Now, as a provider, you got to look at that and go, okay, now that I understand that, can I price myself so that I am going to be well compensated for what I'm doing? And you
Yeah.
can see I can make good money doing this. I can be well compensated if I do this well. And yet at that price, I am providing amazing value for my customers, that when my customer sees what I'm doing relative to my price compared to the other options that are out on the table, they're going to go, wow, I'll go with you,
Mhm.
because what you're going to give me is so valuable compared, and it's so much better than what I have over here as an option, and it's so much more valuable than what that one is. You're
Mhm.
the no-brainer choice.
Right.
So now you've hit that sweet spot. You're making money at an acceptable, good rate so that you can, make a good living and get compensated well for what
Mhm.
you're bringing to the table. But your customers are also feeling like this is amazing value.
Mhm.
I am being paid. I am getting so much more out of what I'm paying, um, because this is amazing. This is
Mhm.
fantastic. I am getting exactly what I need, and what I'm paying is I'd much rather pay for it than
Mhm.
deal
Well,
with
you're
the
removing the
problem.
price resistance at that
Right.
point.
Correct. So this is how you know how to price your products. The exercise and the process and the flow of what we've talked about here is how you do it. And you got to understand, pricing is always relative. It's relative to the problem that you're solving. Like, so,
Mhm.
so somebody could say, well, I have a course. Okay. What is your course about?
Yeah.
What problem does your course solve? Because it's not like all courses are created equal.
Mhm.
Different courses have significantly different value. Different courses have significantly different abilities to charge a higher price based on the economics of what they provide.
Mhm.
And so your goal is always going to be to provide the best value. You're going to want to be so people are going to look at it and go, wow, what I get for this compared to what I'm paying,
Mhm.
massive, massive gap there. The
Mhm.
value I'm getting versus the price that I'm paying, this is a massive value for me. And so when you do that and they see that in perspective of everything else that's out there, that's when you're going to keep making consistent sales. You're going to be in that sweet spot, and you're going to be well compensated for what you do.
Well, and I saw this another analogy again the other day. So it comes to my mind as you're saying this. It's like a bottle of water, right? You can go to the grocery store, you can buy a case of water for like $5 or something, right?
Mhm.
Maybe 10, whatever. But you go to the airport and buy a bottle of water after you gotten through TSA, you're paying the same amount, or roughly the same amount for a bottle of water that you would have paid for a case of water at the grocery store, and it's all about location. And it's kind of like, even like with coaching services, somebody was saying this years ago. It really caught my attention. Was a friend of mine, he travels all over the country coaching. He said, Chris, he's like, what people are price conditioned to pay for coaching in Ohio is so different than LA or New York or other parts of the country. So if you try to charge LA or New York prices in Dayton, Ohio, where I live,
Right.
he's like, you're going to get a lot of,
This is
pushback because they aren't conditioned in the Midwest to pay the same kind of prices as the East Coast, West Coast, because of cost of living and what they're used to. So, folks, a lot of it is your value is also like, where are you? Where are you? Like, literally, who are you talking to? What are they used to? If you're going to in an inner city environment where everybody's struggling financially, and you're trying to sell a $2,000 course on building a business, guess what? You're not going to sell many courses, if any at all.
right. It's going to be
You
hard.
could but you could go to like a wealthy area and they're like only $2,000. Shouldn't that be like $20,000? Like, you see I mean, once again, it's a different mindset, but it's also a different location that, so a lot of it is just finding that part of it too, is where, who is my audience? What's the pond I'm fishing in, as far as customers, what are they used to paying, and how can I position myself within that realm? So I think this is a really important topic, David, that we brought up here today, and we hope that this has been helpful. But guys, if you need help really thinking this through, working through this, that's why we created Design Launch Grow, because we know that there's a lot of need and there's a lot of, customers and clients out there that you can help, but you're going to struggle to build your business if you don't figure out your pricing model and your value proposition of what you're offering to people. And that's what we do. And we have roadmaps to walk you through that process in our program. So check out designlaunchgrow.com. Any last words, David, on this topic?
No, I mean, these are all like things that are very important if you're going to be successful in business. Because again, if you get the pricing wrong, you can destroy a business very quickly, or you can be so poor that you can never get your business really to any point of success because you're always going to be broke. And so getting this right is incredibly important. If we could help you, we'd love to be able to do that.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Well, we'll see you next time.